Okay, for the next group, climate crisis associated with epidemiological, environmental, and ecosystem effects of the storm, from flooding, landslides, and damage to urban and rural areas, extreme weather events, Storm Daniel in Thessaly, Greece. Ioannis Adamopoulos, Aiki Franzana, and Nikki Sirio. They're going to do they're going to present online.
Let's wait for the connection. Domenico.
After the presentation, we'll have only a few minutes for other questions and for the conclusions. Okay?
There was another presentation from the group of Nigeria, but their flight was delayed, so their presentation will be moved to the next session tomorrow, okay? There are some problems in the presentation.
Meanwhile, for example, Anna, I really liked what you talked about when you talk about true cost accounting. Cost is usually never mentioned or seldomly mentioned, especially from an objective point of view. And well, I wanted to ask you about your personal experience building green spaces.
I think that we can address this topic of the costs if you want to answer to his question. Then that you can resume maybe. If we are not ready, we can move to the question session. So, please.
About green spaces?
Yeah, your personal experience about the green spaces, the population's input, if you had any kind of operational, just logistical problems about the costs of building a green space in places like that.
Well, I have been as architect and urban designer building some proposals. Yes, so there are certain open public spaces that now are parks, specifically and particularly in Bilbao, in the north of Spain, that have been developed under our lead. So there are certain. Are you asking me about barriers or? Yeah. Because when we
also about your personal experience with the populations where you've been working.
Because it's very different if we are talking about green spaces in Europe or we are talking about green spaces globally. So what does it mean, a green space? As I was proposing before, is something that we need to redefine. And in the space in the urban law only means an open space that has no walls and has not a roof. This is it. It's supposed to be a green space. But indeed, it's not necessarily green. And even though we could think that it's green because it has some trees or there is some urban furniture, for instance, the perviousness of the soil, that now is something key for the water cycle management and everything that has to do with heat island effect, that, as you know, is one of the most important and severe risks for health and for the environment in Europe, is not considered yet in the urban legislation. Okay. So on one hand, I think that we need to redefine and to decide what indicators are going to be there for a green space to be a real green space that is prepared not for our present but for our future. I'm talking about climate shelters. I'm talking about perviousness, catalytic surfaces. So a lot of elements and dimensions that we have now more or less resolved as for technology, but are not compulsory yet to be there. So this is on the one hand, and of course in Europe, usually we have co-participatory processes, so the projects I have been involved were co-decided or at least co-validated by the population beyond the decision makers, and they are, I'm lucky to say that they are intensively used so far. Other issue is what we are not talking about specifically about Europe, and we are talking about other kind of countries in which we are going to face other problems that I am not sure we have time to discuss now.
Well, this is a very interesting field of intervention, because it is underestimated how much benefits we can get from the use of green barriers, also in industrial areas, also for soil. You spoke about willow, that's very interesting, but not only willow. Also, we have a different kind, as you said, of a possibility. We use different kind of plants with different kind of contaminants.
Yes,
so
yes, and indeed.
There's an underestimation of that.
No, and it goes beyond green spaces, because I was on purpose talking about green infrastructure, because if we go for green infrastructure, we could think also on facades, on roofs. So one of the biggest problems in Europe now is not about how to build new buildings, it's about how to do with our building stock, because 98% of buildings are not prepared for us to reach the 2050 goals. So either we touch and do something with these buildings that are already there, or we are not going to get it. And of course, insulations, carpentry, I'm not going to enter in technicalities as an architect, but green facades are a possibility. Why not? We can dream about that.
Maybe we have to wait as the concrete, the cement has a life of 100 years, that all the buildings built in the 50s gets really old, and they must be rebuilt in 2050.
Yes, but they must be rebuilt. We are not going to be able to demolish them, because there are a lot of people, most of us are living in this kind of buildings. So we must be very, very conscious about the severity of the issue, and that we have
maybe we will need to rebuild, because after 100 years the cement and the concrete we use maybe will end their lifespan. No?
I think as far as I have understood in some committees and innovation camps I am participating in during the last months, the structure can be there. It is super difficult to demolish the structure, but everything that is not the structure, and because of this I'm talking about roofs, about walls, about facades, allow us to think beyond. And because of this I was proposing this pathway.
Thanks a lot for this clarification. We have time for other questions for 5-10 minutes. If we can open the discussion. In the meanwhile, I ask to Dr. Sica if this research they are performing on CO2 capture on cement plant can be used on large scale. When you forecast in which kind of time we can imagine a use on large scale of these technologies?
Yes, in the future we can doing a big big industrial for biomass, the algal biomass production. But for the moment, we have we are studying for the
a little pilot.
Sí.
So
but
we prepare a larger pilot.
Yeah, the CARB is a very large, important project, because we have the skills of a team network. Is a biggest producer of industrial plants for cement factory, but also for street building and so. Yeah, renewable green energy production. So we will use the energy, the active energy of the university as innovation hubs, and the team network for your ability in construction of industrial plants, and Plastic Alpha as a consultant for biomass production of algae.
So we hope to see next year's other presentation on the progresses.
Yeah.
Do you have other people have question on this project? No. So we can pass to Dr. Crisanti. Just a question: if you have imagined to test other cells, the effect of PM2.5, for example, on other cells like neurons or other kind of cells, and if you are aware that vimentin has been proposed as a marker of cancer, and that it is very interesting that you found some results on the vimentin, the one you presented.
Thanks for the questions. No, at this moment, no, I not think another cell line, because the project will continue with the test for the for testing the neuroinflammation process, and we continue with the analysis of inflammatory. Excuse me, cytokine cascade inflammatory. The next steps consist in this. So we can set the experiment with some interleukin and with the superoxide dismutase. So the project at this moment will continue with this in this direction. Okay. And I not think another cell line, honestly. Vimentin, yes, is a possible biomarker for use in the next step, but at this moment we'll continue the project in direction.
So if I understood well, you found an association between the exposure to 2.5 and the concentration of vimentin, isn't it? Or can you...
The correlation with the vimentin concentration? Yeah. Yes, this is another point that we can see in the next step.
It could be interesting to assess the carcinogenic power of particulate matter.
Yeah, I think that is another interesting subject, and I hope to present the new results. For example, also this type of results the next year, because this is the presentation that I have do today is the second step of the presentation of the last year.
We can wait for next year.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks.
The vimentin correlation and the microRNA expression in the cells.
Very highly scientific soundness. Do you have other questions? Anybody has other questions?
I would like to congratulate them. I really liked your protocol. PM2.5 is a no risk factor, but what you're doing looks great, especially if we can find the specific time between the exposure to any PM2.5 particles and the beginning and the middle and the end of this physiopathological cascade.
Yeah, because I see that it depends of the time of exposure. The results is different. Because after 24 hours we have observed no particular effect of the PM, but already 48 in part to 72 hours, the effect is higher. And then we can see, we can do other experiment with an higher time of exposure. Because I think that the correlation between the time is important, also the correlation with the concentration. And then in the next step, this is another point that I can consider.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks. Anybody has other question? No? So let's go to Lorenzo. Anybody has a question for Lorenzo on this magic calculator? Somebody, Melissa and no, please. Diamo un microfono al collega lì giù.
Thank
un
you.
altro a Melissa, grazie.
A quick question. You showed that transport was one of the main, and I imagine that's moving people that are moving diseases. If that's the case, and again, the same comment for before, I'm all for the solutions that you are proposing. I'm just being advocate of the devil most of the time. I don't use a car, and when they ask me why I never had one, why Kyoto? We have a protocol. Out of 1 of 4, I'm one of the 3 that don't have a car. But I find, again, that when you explain to society or migrants like me, you can't travel anymore a lot, it's hard. And I've heard everything in France trying to fix the problem. You know, you have priority because you have to see your family on the other side of the Atlantic. We're going to prioritize people movement. I said, can we just find a technological solution for planes? There is none. You can't put hydrogen on the airport. So how do you see showing to people, for example, we have to reduce movement in this global village, and that will control disease. It looks obvious. You move less. We have also heard, let's stop birds flying to move virus influenza. It's impossible. So I want to see how you count reality on that.
Thank you. Thank you. Very interesting question, and as you said, I'm probably not the right person to ask it. I'm a medical doctor. This is not my specialty. However, what I can say is that, first of all, this is a policy issue. It's not a single. I think that putting every responsibility on the single individual level, it's just trying to detract from the issue. It's a way to distract people. And on a policy scale, there are obviously ways to disincentivize means of transportation that have too high a cost on the environment to actually be present in a world of the future. I've seen some evidences of potential, very, very removed ways of making aviation almost sustainable. Sustainability is never going to be achievable in aviation, but something quite close could be. And it's usually using biofuels, reverting to shorter flights. So moving aviation back to what it was in the mid-19th century rather than what it is today. But it's mostly, the largest impact will be in avoiding unnecessary movement and trying to just prioritize what is indispensable and trying to I think that the issue is trying to reimagine the way in which society works, and especially reimagine the way in which community works. So if we can truly make society community-based, in which you're spending the time with all the people around you, transportation will become slightly less of an issue. As you said, there are a lot of protocols. Tokyo Protocol is one of the largest one of them. But I honestly don't see a future in which we can completely make transportation sustainable. I see a future in which we can reduce all the unnecessary transport movement. We can try to promote active transportation. We can redesign cities in a way in which it's easier to walk on foot than it is to take a car. It's becoming more and more so the case for metropolis, but should not just be something for metropolis. This should be like the way in which society works in general. I'm not sure if this was an answer, but I'm not sure if I have an answer. So, thank you.
Elisa?
Oh.
Thank you. Just kind of saying again something related to the last question. I think this is a complex problem that needs not just, I mean, it requires a lot of imagination, but it requires a lot of will, political will, because the people with the money will do whatever they want just because they have money. Once it affects them, then that's when changes will start. But that was not my question. My question is, are you familiar with the tool developed by the MIT En-ROADS?
I've heard of it. I haven't used it, so I've read of articles being wrote on that, but I cannot say that I'm familiar.
Because I think there is a lot of potential that you can do with the tool you just used, the carbon calculator, or how was it? Global calculator. Compare it with the MIT En-ROADS that it's updating every year, as far as I know, and you can even develop a new index that is not there in the calculator yet, which I think has to be correlated with the co-benefits in health with the carbon emissions. So I think you should use some potential there, try to compare it, try to see if there are differences, if they use any other measurements or units of measurement, and maybe you could come up with cool conclusions. Just an observation, yeah.
Thank you so much. Actually, adding some parameter for co-benefits, and especially health co-benefits, it's one of the goals of my PhD. So this is another way that I can achieve it, maybe with more updated data than what we have on the global calculator. So thank you so much.
Another question at the end, Domenico.
Okay. Yeah. Well, last question.
Hello. Hello. You hear me? Okay. Thank you very much. It was a very insightful presentation comparing different results from different tools. My question relates to the health co-benefits, actually. Could you expand a little bit more about the specific co-benefits that we are able to calculate now and those that we are looking to calculate in order to be able to have perhaps better estimates and convince even better different groups of stakeholders? Because we know that currently the calculations are still limited and there's a long way to go, but yeah, interested to have your thoughts on this. Thank you.
Hi, okay. Thank you so much for the question. So you're completely right. It's very difficult to calculate co-benefits. At the moment, the ones that are easiest to calculate are those related to pollution in any way, because pollution has been investigated for a long time. There are very strong, solid models, especially for PM2.5. For PM2.5, it's almost possible to predict death in a model that it's up to 2050, if not up to 2100. You can find some very good example on the European calculator. There is an entire side that is just dedicated to health co-benefits. Other co-benefits that have been calculated are related to homes, more especially to insulation. All the co-benefits of having a poorly insulated house is a very well-known risk for developing cold, fevers, and usually in an older population can lead to premature death. There is some literature on that. There is an article by Jennings et al. Of 2019, I believe, that it's giving pretty good estimates in the United Kingdom. We do have some pretty solid models for diet, both from the global burden of disease and from single articles, Lane et al. We have a little article ourselves in Italy, and especially so sustainable diets, it's another field. And for transportation, especially active transportation versus just using cars, there are some pretty solid studies. Everything else, there is almost nothing. So there are so many other health benefits to quantify, and it's going to be an effort to do so because, as you said, it's extremely important for engaging with the policy scene in any way, shape, or form. Thank you.
Well, I think
Okay, maybe we can end the session here and move for the break, Domenico?
Yes, exactly. We will have a coffee break now, but not only. I invite you to join the coffee break. But
Let's move.
No,
Thank you for
wait
coming.
a moment. Let me finish.
Sorry?